us too.
So I am so happy to have Ben Azadi with us here today, my good friend and teacher of many, many wise things over the years. I met Ben, gosh, back in 2021, I think, when I first did an interview with him. And shortly after that, I actually joined his academy. Have met many great people along the way and just learned from his wisdom and his podcast, the biweekly calls, all of that. I mean, he's just so generous with his knowledge, and he has a new book coming out. So I wanted to bring him in and have a conversation about what he's been up to and what he's got to share with us about the book. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ben, and tell us a bit about what you've been up to.
Yeah, Martha. Well, it's an honor to be here with you. I love and appreciate you. You're a good friend. I learn so much from you all the time. Every conversation, there's always a golden nugget of information. One of the smartest people that I know. And it's been great seeing how you've transformed your health over the years. And you're just a constant learner and teacher. I'm very similar. So we resonate. We're always sharing different things we're running into and seeing what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So thank you for doing this. I'm honored to share about the book with your community. So the book is called Metabolic Freedom. I just got my author copies, and it's all about the metabolism. We know that in the United States, there's a big problem, not just in the US, but across the world. But in the US, we spend around $4.6 trillion every year on healthcare. Yet we are sicker than ever before, and pharmaceutical companies are richer than ever before. And even though we spend that much on healthcare, which, by the way, $4.6 trillion would be the fourth largest GDP in the world if it was a GDP, we still rank 36, 37 in the world in terms of our health status. And diabetes plays a big role there. 1 out of $4 spent on healthcare is spent on diabetes, primarily type 2, which is a metabolic disease. A lot of these diseases are metabolic diseases. So we have a big problem. So I wanted to write a book that outlines the problems. Here are the main causes that lead to metabolic disease and diseases. And then here are the solutions. We talk about ketosis. We talk about fasting, different biohacks. You're aligning your circadian rhythm with Mother Nature. And then we get into the protocol, which it has a 30-day plan at the end of the book, which takes the information and puts it together in a 30-day plan to restore your metabolism and achieve this metabolic freedom concept, which essentially is metabolic flexibility. So I wrote the book because people are hurting. I saw my dad suffer through this. You have a pain to purpose story as well. And a lot of these conditions are preventable and also reversible. And I want to give people that hope and also the action steps to do that.
So I love that. I'm really excited to get my copy of the book. When's it shipping?
It's going to be delivered on May 13th. So it'll ship the day before, and the release day is May 13th. So you'll get it on that day. Yeah. Okay,
great. Because I'm flying out of town on the 14th, so I can take it on the plane and read it.
Where are you going? Are you going to Meatstock?
No, I'm actually going to I'm hosting a Parkinson's conference in Wisconsin, and I'm going to meet a couple of the Australian speakers who are going to acclimate for a few days and then take them on to the meeting in Wisconsin.
That is cool, Martha. I didn't know you were doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll be excited to share some of that information with you after we have the conference, because it's very relevant to what's going on with our metabolic health. But I want to kind of get through that first. But one of the questions I have for you, because when I started out, very focused on keto and eating keto, which I did for a very long time, like strictly keto for, I'll say, a year and a half, and then started converting back. And now you talk more about metabolic flexibility. So can you share with people kind of why a keto and carnivore really helps with the inflammation and the resetting, and then why it is important to kind of move back into some metabolic flexibility and not just no carbs at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I'll get you an advanced copy of the book even before that. So give me your shipping address after we finish this. I'll send it out to you.
Okay.
So when I reference a study, I do reference this one study in the book that showed, it's a 2022 study that showed 93% of American adults are, not even adults, but American people are metabolically unhealthy. 93%. So for those, sometimes these like stats kind of like, they kind of go over people's heads and we just lay out all these stats. But when you just visualize this, if you're walking down your street, let's say your downtown neighborhood, and you see 100 people on the street, 93 out of those 100 people have metabolic dysfunction. That's almost every single person on the street. And I call them being in a keto deficiency. They're stuck burning sugar and glucose. There's nothing wrong using sugar and glucose as a fuel source unless you're always using sugar and glucose as a fuel source. It's a rapid way to aid yourself, because what ends up happening is that you need to produce insulin to deal with that excess blood sugar spike from all the carbohydrates that you're eating. And from time to time, that insulin that gets produced to shuttle the glucose out of the bloodstream into the cells, not an issue. But when that's chronically happening, it's a big issue. And the studies are showing that you could have full-blown insulin resistance, in other words, hyperinsulinemia, for on average 6 to 14 years without your blood sugars changing at all. And we're missing this. And that's a Whitehall study too, Martha, that showed that 6 to 14 years, over a decade in some cases. And the reason why it's being missed is because most doctors are not testing a fasting insulin, which is a blood test. They're testing a fasting glucose, which is great, or even an A1C, which is also great. But again, those will not change for 6 to 14 years. Meanwhile, you could have full-blown insulin resistance and your doctor is missing it because they haven't tested a fasting insulin. When you have high levels of insulin, it's the first domino to fall. I talk about this in chapter 2, that triggers a cascade of metabolic diseases. It's first prediabetes, full-blown diabetes. And once you're diagnosed with diabetes, it dramatically increases your risk of cancer, heart disease, strokes, kidney failures, a whole host of diseases out there. I saw this with my dad. So with fasting insulin is a test I recommend your audience get right away. And it's something your conventional doctor will not order because there's not a medication for a high insulin. There's only a medication for a high glucose. So that's why they don't order it for you. But you could request it. And if they deny it, if your insurance denies it, it's a very cheap test. You could pay out of pocket $30 to $50. The second thing you want to pay attention to when you get your report back, your results back, is that the reference range on that fasting insulin report is going to be between 3 and 28. Meaning, if you score a 17 on that fasting insulin or a 12 or a 22, it's not going to be flagged as being an issue because it's within the reference range. But I got to tell you, that's insulin resistance. Anything over 6 is insulin resistance. You want your insulin to be between 3 and 6. That shows sensitive levels of insulin. And I can tell you this, if you get your insulin levels between 3 and 6 on a continuous basis, you will dramatically decrease your risk of metabolic diseases. You'll burn fat and you'll feel good. So 93% of Americans have high levels of insulin, which eventually turn into high blood sugar levels and then diabetes, but it could be caught way before. So Einstein always used to say, intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them. We want to be a genius and we want to order the fasting insulin. Keto is a great way, as you know, Martha, to lower glucose levels, lower insulin levels, lower inflammation, raise glutathione in the body. And for 93% of Americans, they really need keto. They forgot how to burn fat, and ketones are simply a byproduct of burning stored fat. But then we have the people in our space, Martha, that are so all in with keto and carnivore, and they love it, and I love it too, but they stay there for years. You said you were there for about a year and a half. I was guilty of that myself when I first started doing keto back in 2014, 2013. And that's another form of metabolic inflexibility when you're only burning fat and now you forgot how to process carbohydrates and sugar. It's just another form. So we don't want that. We want to be metabolically free, where we could have carbohydrates, use it for energy, burn the excess as fat, and feel good, and then have fat and protein do the same thing and have no food and burn your own body fat and still feel incredible. That's metabolic freedom. So for most people, they need keto. And then for people that are in the keto space for too long, they need to flex out. And I called it keto flexing in my previous book. I call it metabolic flexing in the current book.
Great. Well, there's not a pharmaceutical for treating insulin resistance, but I think I talked to you about our clinical trial and the results showing that it actually impacted insulin, the sugar shift product in the clinical trial that we did, reduced that insulin number and improved something called the HOMA-IR, which is a calculation of your insulin resistance. And so, like, we have talked a lot about sugar as the enemy, and it is, you don't want to be eating a lot of sugar. But I don't know if you're familiar with, there's something called the Glucose 101 protocol, and I've been wanting to hop on one of the calls and ask you about this. But there's a doctor who started treating people with head trauma who had developed insulin resistance, I think, of the brain. So he was working with high school students, and he actually uses a glucose protocol to reset the brain. And it takes about 6 months, which is kind of an interesting period of time. And I'm wondering if that's another sort of metabolic flexibility switch that, may be important. But have you heard of this?
Only from you. You were telling me about this, and I saw you in Miami for the Biohack Expo. I remember you told me about that, and I thought, interesting. And if it works, great, a great tool. I think the reason why it might work is because it's a change. The body has to adapt to this sort of protocol, and the adaptation is where a lot of the magic happens. So when you change your foods, when you go from burning fat to burning sugar, or vice versa, the adaptation creates some great changes. Hormone optimization. The body wants to survive, so good cells get stronger, bad cells don't adapt. It's survival of the fittest. So that might be what's going on here, but I haven't heard too much about it outside of what you taught me or shared with me. So I am curious. And then yes, back to your point with your sugar shift product. Yeah, there's no medication for a high insulin, but there is some great things we can do. And sugar shift is a great product. I think you were referencing the Cuba study that you did. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah.
Great study, great product. Yeah, I love it.
So, when you were at the, we were in Miami at the Biohacker conference together, and I loved the demonstration you did there, because you're talking about a lot of the biohacker things, and people sort of jump in and try to do everything all at once, and they create a high load of stress. But you also talk about something called hormesis, and maybe explain to our audience what kind of stress hormesis is, and why maybe you don't want to jump into everything on the biohacker list right away if you are in a state of inflammation and you need to kind of work your way back.
This is great. Yeah, I love talking about hormesis. Once we understand hormesis, we view our health from a different lens that is very, very beneficial, because so many times we hear about somebody doing a long fast or a cold plunge or a sauna and they feel amazing. And then you give it a try and you don't feel amazing. You feel awful. Why is that? How come they feel great, but I feel inflamed? It all has to do with hormesis. So essentially, and I talk about this in chapter 1 of the book, hormesis is a stress that you apply intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, but it's a stress that you apply to the body. And when your body adapts to that stressor, you're healthier. You burn more fat. You have more energy. You extend your lifespan. But you got to adapt to the stress. We hear stress being bad for you. Stress is a silent killer. And that may be true when you're not adapting to the stress. But stress is also really important for creating resilient cells, longevity, and feeling great, healthier mitochondria. Again, survival of the fittest. Everybody has a different, what's called hormetic zone. So the analogy that I did on stage at the Biohacker Expo is I asked for 2 volunteers, and I wasn't sure if anybody was going to raise their hand, but there were 2 people that I knew, Stephen and Craig, that raised their hand, and I brought them on stage. And I had pre-planned this, so I was going to do this example myself. So I brought out 2 bottles of water, and then I thought it would be cool to bring the audience on. So I had Craig hold a bottle of water that was filled to the top. So for those listening, or watching, imagine if I had in my right hand here a bottle of water filled to the brim, to the top. Then I had Stephen hold another bottle of water, but it was just a quarter full on my left hand. So the one that has the water filled to the top, they have a high stress bucket. Their stress levels are through the roof, whether it's physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress. So any other stress they add into the equation, that little bottle starts to overflow, meaning they don't feel good, they get symptoms. But the other person who has their stress bucket a quarter full, they could get away with a 5-minute cold plunge. They could get away with the 3-day fast. They could get away with all these different stressors and feel great because you could shake that and it won't spill over. You could rattle it. You could apply all these stressors. So everybody has a different hormetic zone. If your stress bucket is super high, it's going to be difficult to add all these biohacks, which are all stressors, because you're not going to adapt to it. So we want to find out where our hormetic curve is, and then work on increasing it. And you actually work on increasing it by slowly adding in these stressors. So for cold plunging, for example, instead of going all in and doing a 5-minute plunge, you maybe do 10 seconds the first time, adapt to it, and then do 15 seconds and work your way up. Same thing with fasting. It's a stressor. So maybe you start with a 16-hour fast and you feel good, you adapt to it. You could look at your glucose and ketones, and then you work on building up that fasting muscle, that fasting window. So if you just apply this hormetic principle to the things you're doing for your health, it will make a lot of sense, because when you apply a stress, you should feel better. You should feel better after the sauna. You should feel better after the red light therapy, the cold plunge, not worse. You should get better sleep and you should recover. If you're seeing the opposite, like exercise, for example, if you're feeling wiped out the rest of the day after exercise, you did too much. Dial it down. You should feel more energized. So yeah, it is an important concept. And once you really learn it and start applying this, you could increase that hormetic ceiling, add these stressors, and now adapt to it and become stronger and healthier.
I think that's great advice. I have lately, well, Dr. Davis is a friend of mine, and he's a cardiologist, and he's had some concerns over the cold plunging, and that
I saw his videos on that. Yeah.
People are kind of indiscriminately jumping into the cold plunge, and you can have a heart attack. So it's
or stroke. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
it creates vasoconstriction. And if you're unhealthy and your mitochondria are challenged and you do that like for 3 minutes, not a good idea. And unfortunately, Martha, many people in our space, even in our biohacking space, they may talk about hormesis. I don't think they really understand it. I don't think they do. And it's a really important thing to understand, because Dr. Davis is right. I know another colleague of mine, Dr. Rob Kameneric, who said 2 of his patients got a stroke from a cold plunge. So if you're unhealthy, you really have no business jumping right into a cold plunge.
So just, your comment about that you're walking down the street and 93 of the 100 people you see are unhealthy. I often think about, and I talk to people about the fact, I for most of my early career in a totally different field, probably 60% of the time I was on the road, in airports, on airplanes. And now, and I do travel now, but when I travel now, I am shocked at the difference in the health state of people that I see on the airplane, the number of wheelchairs. And I mean, that's not against anyone in a wheelchair. It's just the fact that there's a tremendous amount of people now who can't walk down the aisle of an airplane under their own force because of all these metabolic issues. And one of the things I talk about quite a bit is glyphosate, which isn't the only toxin in our environment, but that's another area that you focus on, is this tremendous toxin load that we're under. And you have a program also that helps people kind of get through clearing out the toxins so they can have healthier cells to get back to metabolic flexibility. So maybe share for a minute your thoughts on the toxin load, where it's coming from, and how to kind of care for your body through a detoxification process, which can be kind of difficult.
Yeah, it's a really important topic. And you're right. I see the same thing when I travel at airports, airplanes. And It's astonishing. Rarely eat on an airplane. I never eat the airplane food. And if I eat something, it's like macadamia nuts or something, but everybody's eating, they're drinking. It's a really awful sight. They're accepting the peanuts that have the nuts and seeds that have a whole bunch of seed oils. It's just not a conducive environment for health. But with toxins, this is the biggest issue. So chapter 5 in Metabolic Freedom, it's all about how these environmental toxins lead to metabolic diseases. And I think it's number one right now. I think it's the number one contributing cause to metabolic disease over seed oils, over processed sugar, even over high fructose corn syrup. Now, those are all bad, and I talk about them in the book, but I think the toxicity conversation is the number one thing to talk about because it is so prevalent. Yeah, it's the glyphosate. I talk about glyphosate, and I reference, as you know, but Stephanie Senath's work from MIT and Nancy Swanson, and I reference some of her information in her book, which she shows strong correlations, and I know it's not causations, but really strong, hard to argue correlations when they started applying glyphosate in the late 1980s, and then diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and how it increased along the way, the same amount of time with the same amount of the application. And we know glyphosate, it is a mitochondrial poison. It chelates minerals from your body. They're finding that over 90% of Americans are urinating glyphosate in their urine, and it's everywhere. It's in 60+% of the rainfall. And I make the comparison, and I talk about Italy and how Italy has a fraction of the diseases and diabetes and obesity that we have here. They also have a longer lifespan, and they don't work out more. There's a lot less gyms in Italy. Yes, they do walk more. They have community, and that's a big factor. They practice gratitude more than we do here. But they also have strong regulations for glyphosate, red dyes, and they started doing this in 2016. That's the biggest reason why they're healthier than us. That's why somebody goes to Italy and they could have wheat, pasta, pizza, and say, wow, I actually don't feel bloated and fatigued. But when I have the same thing in the US, I feel awful. Well, because they don't have that amount of chemicals, as much chemicals as we do here. And then we have a set of toxins called obesogens that are endocrine disrupting chemicals found in microplastic, so plastic water bottles, plastic Tupperware, plastic cutting boards. There's BPA found in cash register receipts. So here's a tip for your audience. Say no to cash register receipts because there's about 1,000 times more BPA in a cash register receipt than in canned food. But these toxins, when they enter the body, they trigger a pathway in the body called PPAR gamma. And I want your audience to remember what I said earlier on. The number one priority for the human body is survival. It will do everything possible in the short term to survive, even if that means making you fat and inflamed and then disease later on. So when toxins enter the body, PPAR gamma is triggered to shuttle those toxins out of the bloodstream because the body does not, the innate intelligence does not want these toxins to enter your vital organs and kill you on the spot. So PPAR gamma is kind of like insulin. Insulin shuttles the excess glucose to your cells. PPAR gamma shuttles the excess toxins into your cells, your fat cells, your adipocytes, because the solution to pollution is dilution, and there's room in your fat cells. And if there's not enough room, your innate intelligence will literally expand the size of those fat cells for those toxins to go in. And if it runs out of room because there's just so many toxins in there, it will create new fat cells. And then we try to lose weight, we exercise, we do keto, and we start burning fat, which we can do, but then we dump these toxins, and you can't burn that for fuel. You auto-intoxicate, and now your body thinks every time I burn fat, I dump toxins, I recirculate those toxins, I'm going to stop burning fat. That's what weight loss resistance is. One more toxin that is not being spoken about that I put in the book are a new classification of toxins called diabetogens. These are specific heavy metals that have been shown to disrupt beta cell function in the pancreas, triggering prediabetes and in some cases, full-blown diabetes. And in the studies that I referenced, it showed that between 30 and 50% of all diabetic cases in the US are from these toxins, meaning you could be eating clean, but if you have a set of these toxins, it will still trigger diabetes. So it's a big issue. What can we do? Simple swaps, glass instead of plastic, no to the cash register receipt, keep those detox pathways open. Take BiotiQuest to remove the glyphosate. It's a great product. If you're taking antibiotics, take the antibiotic antidote. What's the best product for removing glyphosate? Is it the sugar shift?
Well, actually, all of our products contain our plantarum strain that breaks down the glyphosate. So you will get the glyphosate remediation with every product. But I think the sugar shift is special because it also enables metabolic flexibility. And so I think, there's some beauty to that. But I actually have a physician in Hawaii who takes the Ideal Immunity regularly. And he, back in the 1970s, had a patient who came back from South America or something with he's not even sure what it was, but he caught it from his patient and had severe gastrointestinal stuff from the 1970s to like 2022 when his daughter told him about our products. And he was like, I've tried everything. This probably isn't going to work. And the Ideal Immunity is the only thing that's worked for him. So I think it also has some nice capability for helping with that toxin load, particularly if it's from some type of, pathogenic organism, which is what his was.
That is interesting. Yeah. So any of your products will help with that. I also like fulvic and humic minerals as well for that. Of course, eating organic as much as possible, but even organic food has glyphosate, unfortunately. And keeping those detox pathways open. There's some cool things you can do. Support the liver, the gut, the kidney, the colon, the lymphatic system. Sauna is great. Sweating is great. Movement is great. Going upstream and doing a full-blown, really good heavy metal detox program. You've done it. I've done it. Also a good idea, but it's an important thing. And I talk about coffee enemas and castor oil packs and ways to keep those detox pathways open. I give some suggestions in the book.
So great. I've learned so much from you over the course of these couple of years. Now, I know we just have a few minutes left, but one of my favorite things about you and the work you do is, vitamin G and mindset. So I really think those are maybe the most important factors in our health and our outlook. So tell us a little bit about vitamin G and about mindset.
Yeah. Thank you, Martha. You're going to love chapter 10 because it's all about that. It's my favorite chapter in the book. It is the best chapter in the book, hands down. It's all about how your thoughts influence disease or health. And we get into the nocebo effect, the placebo effect, and of course, vitamin G. So vitamin G is the ultimate supplement for anybody looking to burn fat, reverse serious conditions like autoimmune conditions and other diagnoses. And then also it's great for blood pressure, blood sugar. And it's not just me just making up stuff. So I put studies in the book. UC Davis has shown that individuals who take vitamin G have healthier blood pressure levels, healthier blood sugar levels. There's one study I put in the book. It's the most comprehensive study ever done on vitamin G. It was from Harvard, published in JAMA, and it came out last year. And it showed that it looked at 49,275 nurses, quite the study. And it showed that the nurses who took vitamin G on a daily basis had a 9% reduction in dying from all-cause mortality and a 15% reduction in dying from cardiovascular disease compared to the nurses who never took vitamin G. And then there's another study that you're going to love. This one is so interesting. It was published in PubMed, and it was done on caregivers. Now, caregivers, as you know, Martha, it's a really stressful job. It's a stressful lifestyle. And they looked at something called the MHI, the Mitochondrial Health Index, which was a test to look at how healthy their mitochondria were. And it showed that the nurses who took vitamin G at night before bed had healthier mitochondria the following morning, even during their stressful jobs of caregiving. And so what is vitamin G? Unfortunately, Martha hasn't made a BiotiQuest vitamin G product yet because she cannot. They don't sponsor the podcast. We don't have an affiliate link. You might already be on Amazon looking for it. But vitamin G is vitamin gratitude. It is the feeling of gratitude, not the practice. It's not an intellectual practice. It's an emotional feeling. It's the feeling of gratitude. And everything I just shared is our studies on gratitude. There's no upper limit. It's free. And I talk more about it in chapter 10.
So I love that. I love that. And I love just the positive mindset and how much impact that has on us and the impact that we have on each other. Because I think if you practice vitamin G, when you come in contact with other people, they feel it, they see it, and it just kind of expands exponentially. And so I am eternally grateful for having met you, for the relationship over the years of learning from you and also watching you grow. And I look forward to many, many more years. And I'm so excited for your book to come out. And I know it's going to be a bestseller right away. And just grateful that you came today, but maybe share a few things that you're grateful for.
Yeah, well, I'm also grateful for you and how much you've grown. It's been cool to see. And we're just getting started, Martha. A lot of people need our help. So we're just getting started. A lot of cool things coming out into the world. I am grateful for you as well. I really am. You've been a great friend. I learn from you all the time. As I mentioned earlier, when you joined our Keto Camp Academy group calls, I'm always like, Martha, what are your thoughts here? And we're all learning from you. You've been supportive of me from day one. You've gone to many of my lectures. I remember KetoCon, Hack Your Health, Biohacker Expo, maybe others, Keto Palooza. You're just such a great supporter, and I love learning from you. I'm grateful for my health as well, because I would not be able to keep up with what I'm doing with like the travel and the speaking and the podcast interviews if I wasn't healthy. And thank God I am healthy. Thank God I'm grateful to God for giving me this amazing healthy body, and also me having the discipline to do the things I need to do to get the job done, because the message is important to get the book out into the world. And I forgot to mention this to you, but we have a free gift for your audience. If you order the book, whether it's a pre-order, the book's coming out May 13th. It's available on hardcover, available on Kindle, and also on Audible and Spotify. I narrated the audio versions. So whether it's a pre-order or a regular order, if you order it over at metabolicfreedombook.com, there are different retailers there. Choose your retailer, whether it's Barnes & Noble or Indigo or Amazon, whatever you want to buy it from. But once you buy it on that page, you'll put your name, email, and order number, and you'll be sent an entire course on the metabolism for free, with exclusive interviews in that course with Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, and Dr. Daniel Pompa. So you could only get that for free if you order the book over at metabolicfreedombook.com.
Thank you so much. That is a great gift. I can tell you the wisdom that Ben shares and the people that he just listed there, you'll learn a lot from them. And just thank you so much for doing the interview. I know you're super busy, and just appreciate you so much.
Appreciate you. Anything for you, Martha.
Thank you. Okay. Stop recording. Thank you. I think that's stopped. Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like it's still recording.
I don't know. It looks like it's still recording. There we go.